अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वापदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपथकमलं श्रीगुरोन् वैष्णवांश्च। श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सगगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितां श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपदां सगगण ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितं च। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरंगे राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरभक्तवृंदा। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 रामो राम राम हरे हरे। Again, for those of you who joined us today, we are reading from chapter 2, verse 13, page 78, and the translation again is, as the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. So this is again very early in Bhagavad Gita. We are in the second chapter. So here Arjun is declining to fight, and the reason is he does not want Bhishma and Drona to be killed. So that is the reason, one of the reasons why he is giving that he is not going to fight. And Krishna is explaining in this verse, both Bhishma and Drona and others have moved along from this boyhood body which they have discarded, and then they have taken on it, and now they have taken on this older body. So similarly at death they will take on another body. So Krishna is explaining there is no need to lament here, because they have already transmigrated in this existing body. So it is something for us to easily understand too, that there is transmigration not just at death or after death, but there is transmigration in this current life as well. So that is the meaning of this particular verse. As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age. So again, it's very easy to understand. If we look at our own pictures when we were 2 months old or 3 months old, if you look at it, it's totally a different person. It's not the person that we know when we take a photograph now, and when we look at it, it's totally different. So the body that we had, the baby body or the childhood body that we had, is not the body that we have now. We have already discarded that body. And how did we discard that body? Even scientists are able to prove very clearly that once every 7 years, every cell in the body is being replaced. So the cells in the body that we had 7 years ago is no longer there in our body. So it's a total different body, and we can see that. So when we were a child or a baby, we are totally different. We had different body, and then when we are about 2 or 3 years old, we have a different body, because it's not even close in look to that baby body that we had. And then similarly, when we are about 40 years old, when we look at that picture, it's totally different from this boyhood body that we had, or the baby picture that we have of ourselves. And similarly, when one is 80 or 90 years old, that body is totally different. So that is the explanation of this particular verse, where we can also comprehend that we transmigrate, where we change the bodies. Even in this life, in this own body, we are migrating from boyhood to youth to old age. So here in the Sanskrit verse, it's Kaumaram, which is the boyhood, and then Yavanam is the youth, and then Jara is the old age. So those are the three phases. But there are more phases as we grow. So in Sanskrit, if we read the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there are few more groups of growing up is there. So one is Kaumaram. Kaumaram is between the birth and at the end of 5 years. At the end of 5 years, that is the Kaumaram period. Kaumaram. Then we have the second, which is from 6 to 10 years old, and then from 11 to 15, and then 15 to 40, and Jara is beyond that. So those are the 5 groups of ages. Pauganda age, Kaishora age. So Kaumaram, Pauganda is from 6 to 10, and wonderful things happen in the past times as we hear. Lord Krishna and Lord Balram were promoted to take care of the cows when they were in the Pauganda age, which is from 6 to 10. They were promoted to taking care of cows. They were taking care of calves, and they were promoted to take care of oxen, bulls and cows in the Pauganda age between 6 and 10. But literally it's not the same age as for anybody which is 6 and 10, because they were always much faster in growing up, so they were much early. But in general, Pauganda is from 6 to 10. Then Kaishora is from 11 to 15 years old, and Yavana is beyond 15, and Jara is the old age. So those are the different groupings as of ages. And here Lord Krishna is saying there is nothing for Arjun to lament, because they have discarded the other bodies, and nobody is lamenting for the bodies that they have already discarded. In Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 9th canto, there is a fascinating story of King Yayati, where Maharaj Yayati was cursed by Sukracharya. He was cursed by Sukracharya to have a very old and invalid body. So right after the curse, Maharaj Yayati gets a very old and invalid body, and he begs for the forgiveness from Sukracharya, because it's a long past time. We can hear that one other time. But then he pleads and then asks for his mercy, and then Sukracharya says, okay, exchange your old age with somebody who's young, who's ready to give it to you. So we don't have that option. When we get old and we have to die. But here, because Maharaj Yayati was ruling the whole of Bharatvarsha, and because he pleads for the mercy of Sukracharya, Sukracharya says, okay, find a young man and exchange, but the young man will get your old body, and you can get the young body of that person. So Yayati asks all his sons one by one, can you exchange your youthful body with me, and I'll give you my old age? None of the sons agree except for Pura. One son agrees, and he takes this exchange offer, where he takes this old body from King Yayati, and he gives him this young, beautiful body. And nobody lamented at that time that King Yayati lost his old body and he got the new body. And that is what Krishna is saying here. There is no need for lamentation even when the old body is gone, because at death they are going to get a young and youthful new body. And the story goes on in the 9th canto, where he is living in this youthful body he actually enjoys in his youthful body for 1,000 more years, because this is from a different yuga. So everybody lived much longer. And he lived for 1,000 more years, and he was indulging in material sense gratification, but he was not satisfied. And all of us can vouch for that. If we are expecting a material sense gratification in this body, we are not satisfied, because we don't get what we want in this current body. So no need for lamentation when the soul actually is in a different body, and the body transmigrates in this existing body itself from boyhood to youth to old age. And of course, at old age, this body is discarded, and that is what we call death. Death means the body without the soul. That is all which is called as death. And birth means the soul enters into another material body, and that is birth. So there is no birth and death for the soul. Na jayate prete va kadachit. There is no birth, no death for the soul. Now, this is not a trick question, but if I ask Prabhu, if I ask you, there's no trick question. So I'm offering you $5, and I'm offering you $250,000. Which one will you prefer? $250,000, right? Now, scientists have come up with the cost of the chemicals in the human body. How much is that? The cost of the human body. When the body is dead, the cost of the human body is 120 rupees. The chemicals in our body is worth 120 rupees. Give or take, let's give it a little bit more, so $5 is the cost of the chemicals in the body. Now, God forbid that this does not happen, but one of our friends is riding or driving in a Ferrari car which is $250,000. He meets with an accident and we are there in the scene. Now, we right away take the car to the garage to get it fixed, or will we take our friend who's injured to the hospital? Take the friend to the hospital, right? We will not worry about the car for now. We may call the insurance later, but we take the friend, even though we know that the cost of this human body, when the soul is not there, is 120 rupees or $5. But here we ignore the car and we take this friend who's got this body which is similar to us, which is 120 rupees or let's say $5. We take him, rush him to the hospital to say, why is that? Because the soul, when the soul is inside the body, it's priceless. Even from material standpoint, when the soul is there, when we are living, we can work and earn money. That is from material standpoint. But the soul is priceless. So when the soul is there, because of that, we give all the importance. When the soul leaves the body, as we discussed, scientists have done research and they try to weigh the body when the person was in the hospital dying, almost dying. They weighed the body with the most accurate instrument, and they weighed the body right after death with the same accurate instrument. There was no difference in the weight of the body because the soul is weightless, 1/10,000 the size of the tip of the hair. So it's immeasurable in a way. So here, when the soul leaves the body, at that time it may not even be worth that $5. The body will stink, there will be worms inside the body, nobody wants that body. Just imagine, forget about the human body. Think of the most expensive racehorse. It may be millions and millions of dollars when he is alive. When the soul is inside the body, the horse is worth so much. All the beautiful dogs that we have, expensive dogs that people buy for thousands and thousands of dollars, they get the value when the soul is inside the body. But when the soul leaves the body, that dead dog or the dead horse, the racehorse, is worth not even $1. They want to get rid of that body right away. So that is the difference between the body and the soul. Now some non-devotees may ask, devotees also die? Non-devotees die, devotees also die. Prabhupada gives a wonderful explanation. It looks like both are dying. Yes, in material life everybody has to leave the body. But what is not seen, and he explains it beautifully well with an analogy. The cat, the mother cat, how does the mother cat carry a kitten? It looks like he's biting the neck of the kitten and he's gently taking the kitten. And the kitten is very well protected. He is very comfortable that the mother cat is taking care. But apparently, if somebody does not know how the mother cat carries the kitten, they will get scared as though the mother is trying to bite the kitten. But the kitten is nice and cozy being carried under the care of the mother. That is the devotee, because Vishnu Dutas come and take the soul. Whereas the mouse that is being caught by the cat, it looks the same way. The cat is catching the mouse with the same teeth, but that is death personified for the mouse. That is when the Yamadutas forcibly take the soul out of the body. So that is the difference. Apparently, both the devotees and non-devotees, they have to die. But where are they going? How are they taken? We have this glimpse of this in 6th canto. The Ajam was born in a Brahmin family, and then he indulged in all sinful activities. And then later on, at the time of death, when he saw the Yamadutas coming to rip his soul apart, at that time, he called out for his youngest son, Narayan. And not knowingly or unknowingly, it has its effect. Just like Fire burns dry grass to ashes, all the sins are gone. So whatever sins he committed in this life, in hundreds of previous life, went away because at the time of death, he called out for the name of the Lord, consciously or unconsciously, and then he was given an extension in his life, and then he perfected his spiritualism and then went back home, back to God. So that we know from there. So that is the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee dying. Both looks apparent, but that's not the case. And Prabhupada also says, with regard to the soul, when somebody is coming with a gun in the hand and they're saying, I'm going to kill you, we are terrified. Let me do whatever you want. Why is that? We don't want to die. We don't want to die because Prabhupada explains, subconsciously we know the pain that we have to go through in dying, especially for if you are not a devotee. Clearly says in Garuda Puran that it feels like 42,000 scorpions biting at the same time. 42,000 scorpions. Forget about mosquito biting. Mosquito biting itself sometimes is painful. Think of one scorpion biting. Think of one snake biting. How about 42,000 scorpions biting at the same time? So that is death. And third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam explains graphically about the birth process. It's not a joy ride that when we come out, you know, the pungent food that the mother eats causes so much discomfort for the child, and the child has to be in the shape of a U inside the stomach, and you know, it's a terrifying experience. So subconsciously, when somebody puts the gun in our head and say, I'm going to kill you, we say, please don't kill me, I'll do anything. Because we are subconsciously, we know that we've been through this 8.4 million species of time many times, and we don't want to go through this torture. So Prabhupada explained, make this our last life. We don't want to be born again in this material world. So we get a spiritual body and go back home, back to God. Now, let's look into our identities. All of us have two identities. One is temporary and relative identity. We'll go through that in detail so that all of us understand this. Very important for us to understand. Again, this is from various lectures of Srila Prabhupada I have taken. Very, very wonderfully explained by Prabhupada. One is temporary and relative identity, and the other one is real and permanent identity. So from 11th verse of 2nd canto all the way up to 30th verse of Bhagavad Gita, it's all about the science of soul, that we are not the body, we are the soul. We are the permanent part. That is who we are. What is this relative or temporary identity? True identity is the soul. Aham Brahmasmi. We are not the matter, we are the spirit soul. What is this temporary identity of us? Let's take some example. We identify ourselves by name. My name is Kalki, my name is Anand, and my name is so-and-so. Now, that also changes, it's relative. Because I had a name of Anand, and then it was changed to Ananda Gauranga. Though spiritually, somebody, the Matajis, before they get married, they have their father's name, and then after marriage, they get the first or second name, depending on the culture, they get, so the names is also changeable, it's relative. Is that right? So the names that we identify with is also not permanent. What about occupation? We say, what do you do? I am an engineer, I am a doctor. That also can change. The doctor can become a politician later on. He may become the prime minister. So he can become a politician. The engineer now, his relative identity can change later on because he can become a manager in the same company. The engineer can become a manager. So again, our title or our occupation can change. How about I'm an Indian. If you identify ourselves, I am an Indian, I am an American, that is also relative and temporary. We were all Indians at some point, Sri Lankans, and now we may be Canadians or Americans. So that also is changeable. So any identity that we identify with regard to this body is temporary. So that we'll be able to comprehend. Somebody may, I am rich, Chanchala. So sometimes the rich person becomes poor, poor person becomes rich. So that is also temporary identification. So these are all relative to our body, which is temporary. So we know that we are not Indian, we are not the name of the person, we are not by the occupation that we do, we are not the student. We say we are student, yeah, once you finish your school, you're not a student anymore. So when we think about it, all the designations that we have are decorations for the dead body, because the soul is temporarily in the body and then later on is gone. Prabhupada many times explained this as well. We can do this with a lot of kids today. Many of you may have heard this, but it's so fascinating. We can hear this again and again and again. How do we know who I am? So who are we then? If we are not an Indian, if I'm not the name of the person, if I'm not man, who am I then? That's a wonderful question all of us need to ask. So let's see with some of the examples of what we have outside our body. So, anybody's got a watch? So if I ask, what is that? Mataji, how do you say watch? Whose watch is that? My watch. So that means you are not the watch. Watch is different, so it's your watch. And now Mataji's got a bangle. What is that? My bangle. So you have a headband. What is that? My head. Whose headband? Your headband. So when we say my, that means we are not the headband, we are not the watch, we are not the necklace, we are not the shirt, we are not the dhoti. We are inside, but that is not us. So it's outside of us. So we are not all that. That we know. What is outside the body? How about this? What is this? What is this? Eyes? Whose eyes are those? Your eyes? What is this? My hand, my leg. When you say my hand, my leg, so that means it's you're not the leg, you're not the eye, you're not the head, you're not the ears. So that means you have that. So you may say, so then we can see, are you the body? No, you say it's my body. That means you're sitting inside and you say this is my body, right? So it's not even your body. What if you say I am the body? That is also not true. Even the scientists prove that every 7 years, every cell in the body is changing. So I'm not the body. This is my body. This is my watch, my hand. So you're beyond that. You're sitting inside as the spirit soul. So that is how we get to know that we are not the body, we are not the things on the body, we are not the body itself, but we are the spirit soul, and we are situated in the heart, and or the soul is situated in the heart of the body in every living entity. So there are, like how we have two identity, one is temporary and relative, which is how we identify us with the body, with the name, with the designations, and our real and permanent identity is the spirit soul, Aham Brahmasmi. Like that we have two souls. There are two souls in every body. One is the soul and one is the super soul. And from Svetesvatara Upanishad, Mundaka Upanishad, Prabhupada quotes this so very often, two birds in the same tree. So in this body, this analogy, the body is there inside and the super soul is inside, like that. Two birds in the same tree, in the same nest. The nest is compared to the heart. There are two birds in the same tree. One is eating the bitter fruits of material life, which is the soul, and the other bird, which is the super soul, is a witness to all the activities. And the super soul accompanies the soul every lifetime. Prabhu mentioned last time, even if you keep 1 year for one lifetime, there were 8.4 million species. So for 8.4 million species, assuming that we are in the top of this 400,000 species of human life, which includes even the demigod, so we know we are not on the top. Species of life, Paramatma has always been accompanying us as the true friend. So those are the two, like we are the two, that the soul and the super soul is not the tree, or not the body. The two birds are not the tree. Similarly, the two souls, the soul and the super soul, are not the body. So that's the key differentiation between them. Now what is the food for the soul? So the analogy for everybody to understand, the comparison is, if you think of the car as the body, the driver inside the car is the soul. So if the driver is not there, the car cannot move. So when the soul leaves the body cannot move. Everybody follows this? Similarly, the computer, we can take it as the body, and the electricity that makes this computer work, we can take it as the soul. This is again an analogy. If you take the bird inside the cage as the soul, the cage is the body. So this is like a comparison. And so as we know, when the driver is not there, the car does not move an inch. When the soul leaves the body does not move an inch. Now what is the food for the car? If you use the word food, it's petrol. But can you give the same petrol to the driver? The food for the body is different from the food for the soul. The food for the car is different from the food for the driver. So the food for the soul, according to Vedic literature, is chanting, hearing. So when we chant sincerely, like the child cries for the mother, that's very, very good nutrition for the soul. So Jeev Jago, that's a wake-up call for the soul that is sleeping. So the food for the soul is chanting and hearing, and us hankering to hear about the leelas of the Lord. So when we do that, we are giving soul. And of course prasadam actually caters for both the body and the soul, because our sins are getting expunged and the soul is purified and is ready to go back home, back to God. So we have to feed the soul. Prabhupada gives us this explanation in many lectures. The bird is inside the cage. If you keep on polishing the cage and don't care about the bird inside, the bird will die. If you keep on doing makeup and nice clothes for the body and not take care of the soul inside, which is like the bird in the cage, then the soul cannot be killed. Na hanyate hanyamana sarire, we know that. But in this context, what happens? The soul is in this wheel of samsara. We cannot get out from this birth, death, old age and disease. So we are stuck here. And there are 8.4 million species of life, or 8.4 million dresses that are available. We have this frog dress. We can go and get into the body of a frog. The soul can enter into the body of a frog, and we are a frog. The soul can enter into the body of a horse, the race horse that we talked about, the beautiful pedigree dog that we talked about. We can go into any of these bodies or dresses based on what we can afford. It's like buying a dress. You can buy a Armani dress, we can buy a Levi's jeans, you can buy the most opulent sari if you can afford it. Like, how can we afford different bodies? The highest form of body is human birth, where we can realize our goal of life. So how do you get a human body? It is when we have enough pious credits. Some people are beautiful, some are not beautiful. How is that? They are able to purchase that body through their desire based on the karma, based on the pious credits. If we have a lot of pious credits and a desire and a thought at the time of death, we get a beautiful body, human body. So if we don't have enough pious credits, we perform all sinful activities, we can get lion body or a cat body, or if we do very good things, demigod body or a president's body. But Bhagavad Gita explains, A Brahma Bhuna Loka Punaravarti Narjuna. From the highest planet in the material world, Brahma Loka, down to the lowest world, it can be Patala or beyond that, all the hellish planet. All are places of misery where repeated birth and death takes place. So whether we are Brahma, whether we are CEO of the company, whether we are a rich person, ugly person, young person, we still will be suffering here, because this is Dukkalayam Asasvatam. This is called Durga is the superintendent of the prison. So if you are rich, we cannot be happy in this world. If you are poor, still we are not happy. Prabhupada quotes again and again, we are all in this prison cell. Durga means superintendent of this prison. And she's poking us with this trident. Trident is this three tips, threefold material nature. She's poking us. And she's testing whether we are ready to go back home, back to God. We are all in this prison. Why would somebody be happy that they are in this first class prison? There is a TV, there is a newspaper, no rats. Whereas many of us are in this third class prison where there is no TV, no rat. So somebody who's in the third class prison, will their aim be, I need to go to this first class prison, or let me get out of this prison? So that is the stage all of us are in. According to Prabhupada, graphically he says, get out of this material world. And we can get out of this material world because birth, death, old age and disease is the root cause of everything. We may think, oh, my bills are the problem, my son not getting a job is the problem, car is giving me the problem. These are temporary problems. And these problems are there because we are born and we are living. If you are not born, then we will not have this problem of finding a job, market going down, house value, all that will not be there. Even when we think in that small way, that material problems will not be there. Only when you are born, we have this problem. If you are not born, we go back home, back to garden, there is no problem. So our real problem is how to transcend this birth, death, old age and disease. That's our main problem. Now we can say, I have this body. We can't deny that we have this body. How do we get out from, we know we are the spirit soul, but we are encaged in this body. How do we get out from this cycle of birth, death, old age and disease? There is a wonderful verse in Srimad Bhagavatam 11th canto. Lord Krishna is explaining it to Uddhava. Nradehamadyam sulabam sudurlabam plavam sukalpam guru karnadaram mayanukulena nabasvateritam puman bhavaptim nataretsa atmaha. So here Lord Krishna is explaining, you have got this body which is very difficult to get, but we have this body. It's perfectly constructed. It is like a boat. Use this body which is like a boat with your spiritual master as the captain of this boat, and use this favorable wind which is the instructions from this spiritual, from this Vedic literature, and cross this ocean of material existence and go away from this ocean. So we have this body. What do? We perform devotional service under the guidance of a spiritual master. If you are not initiated, we have our Param Guru, Srila Prabhupada. His instructions are there in the form of a book, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. Wonderful translations are there. And then the Vedic literature will be like the wind that will take this boat to safety from this ocean of material existence. So we are a material body, and it's very easy to cross this ocean of material existence. So this is reincarnation. So we don't want to reincarnate. Though in this verse says we are reincarnating even in this life, from boyhood to youth to old age. Now, even many verses in Srimad Bhagavatam also gives us an indication of reincarnation. There's one very famous verse in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Mother Devahuti is reciting this verse to Lord Kapila. Aho tasva pachato gariyan yajivagre vartate namatubhyam tapaste juhu sasnurarya brahmanachur nama grinati etar. How glorious are those whose tongue are always chanting your holy names. Even if they are born in the family of dog eaters, which is Chandala, the lowest form, even if they are born in the family of dog eaters, they are worshipable. Why? Because for them to chant your holy name, now all of us are fortunate, we are chanting the holy name. May not be 16 rounds, many of you are not initiated, maybe less, but still we are chanting the holy names of the Lord. Now when you look on the road, many people are going, they are not chanting the names of the holy name, they are not fortunate enough. And how are we chanting this holy name? This itself is a proof of reincarnation. So how glorious are those whose tongues are constantly chanting your holy names. Even if they are born in the family of dog eaters, Chandala, they are most worshipable because they have taken bath in all the holy rivers. They have got all the good qualities of the Aryans. They have done everything that is needed to chant the holy name. So these, all of us know, how many of you have taken bath in all the holy rivers of the whole world or the whole universe? Anybody? No. How many of you can say that you've got all the good quality of the Aryans? How many of us can say we've got everything that is required to chant the holy name? No. And how is it possible? We can only confirm based on the fact that we are chanting now, and based on the fact that we have had many lifetimes before where we have gradually progressed to this life. It's not perfect, we are not chanting perfectly, but still we are chanting the holy names of the Lord. That itself is a proof of reincarnation, that the soul is not the body. So again, this verse is a wonderful verse, 2.13. Most of you know this by heart. Dehinosminita dehe kaumaram yavvanam jara tata dehantra praptir tiras tatra namoyati. So a wonderful pastime from the 2nd chapter of 7th canto. and it wonderfully fits into this Bhagavad Gita 13th sloka of the 2nd chapter. You want me to continue? It's a wonderful, wonderful pastime, narration. It's a illuminating instruction by somebody who is very, very powerful, whose character and qualities have been scrutinizingly studied by saints and sages for millions of years. I won't call him very famous, he can be very infamous, but fascinating, illuminating instructions are coming from him. This is Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu in the 2nd chapter of the 7th canto is consoling the wife of Hiranyaksha, who was killed by Lord Varahadev. This we read from the 3rd canto, where Varahadev kills Hiranyaksha. And then we fast forward to the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the 2nd chapter, probably from about 20th verse. This wonderful narration there. He's trying to console. So this pastime is from millions and millions of years ago, because Hiranyakashipu lived in Satya Yuga. That was about, give or take, 4 million years ago. And this pastime, Hiranyakashipu is reciting to the wife of Hiranyaksha, and her name is Rushabhanu, and to his mother Diti, because Demon's mother is Diti and demigod's mother is Aditi. So he's consoling his mother Diti, consoling Rushabhanu, who is the wife of Hiranyaksha, as well as the nephews of Hiranyakashipu. He's consoling them. Is narrated by Narada Muni to Yudhishthira Maharaj in Srimad Bhagavatam, and of course Sukdev Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj, and then Sutta Goswami to the sages in the Naimisharanya forest. So what we are narrating today is not something that only few devotees know. Many countless devotees know, and they have heard this pastime for millions and millions of years. So do you want? Hiranyakashipu starts off by saying, "Do not lament for the death of a hero in front of the enemy." So he starts off with the wrong foot, because he calls Hiranyaksha a hero. He may call him a zero based on what he did, but definitely he's not a hero. But according to him, to console his wife and relatives, he's saying he's a hero. And he's saying in front of the enemy. Now, Lord Varahadev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has no enemies. Supreme Personality of Godhead has no enemies. Bhoktaram Ekatam Sam Sarvalokamayasam Sukrutam Sarva Bhutanam. He is the well-wisher of everybody. Sukrutam Sarva Bhutanam. And then we know Vidya Vinaya Sampane, Brahmani Gavisni, Suni Chaiva Swapagacha, Pandita Samadarshana. Even a Pandita or a sage has equal vision. No enemy, no friend. Everybody is a friend. And also from the 54th verse of 18th chapter, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma Nasochati Nakamshati Sama Sarvesu Bhuteshu. So again, so Supreme Lord is equal to everyone. He is the well-wisher of everyone. As we discussed, he accompanies even the demons as a super soul in the heart. So even demoniac person who ignore the Lord accompanies as the best friend. So he's not an enemy. So he starts off by saying that. Then he says, all of us come together as travelers come together for some time. Like how we go to a restaurant, we eat and drink together, talk for some time and then go away. Like that we come together, souls come together in different bodies for some time and then we go away. Which is, we can easily comprehend that when we are driving from here to Montreal, you take an exit, you go to a food court, and then a lot of people are there, you talk with them, and after that everybody goes to a different destination. That's what Hiranyakashipu is explaining here, that in this life we all come together, and after this life we all go based on our karma to different destinations. Everybody follows this, right? And then, those who follow Shakespeare, you know, there's a famous one, As You Like It. All the world's a stage, all the men are women, all the men are mere players. There is an entrance and an exit, and you know, there are 7 stages. You may have heard this, As You Like It by Shakespeare. So he talks about, we talk about different age groups, Yavanam, Jara, Tata. So like that we have this boyhood, youth. He slightly explains that, and then he talks about profession and he talks about old age too. So these are different stages. So we come as travelers, stay for some time and then go away. And also Hiranyakashipu is saying, we got this body because we misused our little independence that we have. This is a profound Vedic literature that Hiranyakashipu is explaining to the relatives to console them. And he's also saying, just like when you see a reflection of tree, when the water is moving, it looks like the tree is moving. Similarly, when somebody's got this, head is spinning, it looks like everything is spinning, but everything is not spinning, his head is spinning. Like that, Hiranyakashipu is explaining, it looks like the soul is dying when the body is dying, but it's not. The soul is different from the body. And he goes on and explains wonderfully from the Vedic literature, because Prabhupada says, demons are very intelligent, but they indulge in sense gratification and they do not perform service to the Lord. And then he explains a wonderful story which took place many thousands and millions of years ago. So there is a story inside the story. So here, Hiranyakashipu is saying, there was a state called Usinara, and then there was a king called Suyagya, and he was a very brave king. He was a Kshatriya, not like presidents now who say go wage a war thousands of miles ago and they sit inside a bunker. Even if an atomic bomb is dropped, not even water does not shake in a cup. They say, you go fight, I will sit. But Kshatriyas, they go for the fight, they are first in the battle. So here he's angry, he's fighting, and he bites his lip, and at that time an arrow pierces Suyagya's heart and he dies. Kshatriyas are allowed to marry many queens, and all the queens are sitting around the dead body of Suyagya and they are crying tears, rivers of tears are flowing, covered with, mixed with kumkum, and it's flowing down their body, and they're crying, they're not allowing the body to be burnt because they think that the body is the soul. That's what Hiranyakashipu is explaining, the body is not the soul. They are hugging the body and they're not allowing the body to be burned. And at that time, they don't want to get killed as well, because at that time there is Sahamarana. Sahamarana means Sati. So the queens also die with the husband in those days. Now it's not prevalent. So they don't want to die too because they love their own body. They don't want to die. So they're holding on to it. And there is a wonderful verse. Prabhupada in this 7th canto, 20th chapter, he is actually quoting this verse 2 or 3 times. Yasyatma buddhi punapetri dhatuke Swadi kaladradisu bhauma ejadisi yatirtha buddhi sarilena karisej janeshva vigyeshu sa eva gokara. Gokara means cow and a ass. So if we think that we are this body made up of bile, mucus and air, if we think our relatives, our byproducts like sun, they are going to live with us permanently, and if we think our birthplace is worshipable, and if we think that we go to a holy place of pilgrimage and we go and take bath alone and not talk and get information from association from men and get transcendental knowledge, then we are no better than an ass and a cow. This is a verse by Lord Krishna himself in the 84th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, almost the end of 10th canto. Where is this? In Kurukshetra. Right? So this verse clearly explains. So here the queens are thinking that the dead body of the husband, the king Suyagya, is actually him. And at that time, Yamaraj is one of the 12 Mahajans. Do we have a few more minutes? No? So I guess we are out of time. So we have, Yamaraj is one of the 12 Mahajans, all of us know. So Yamaraj desired to come and console the queen, because when they cried, the sound was going up to Yamaloka. So he desired to come, and also because he was a great king, Suyagya, and his body was a ghost body, the soul, because he was in love with his body and he does not want to leave the body even though he died. So he decided to come and preach, because when there is a catastrophe, that's the time when everybody is listening very well. Otherwise we go to a lecture, it's like an entertainment, we hear and we go away. But when there is a serious situation, then our heart becomes a ripened field for the seed of knowledge to be planted. So Yamaraj decided to come and talk philosophy about we are not the body, we are the soul. And he also comes in the form of a 5-year-old boy, because if Yamaraj comes, the queens would say, you took the life of my husband, give back the life. So he decided to come in the form of a 5-year-old boy, and also when he's a boy, he can enter into the palace very easily. So he comes, but when he's coming, he's thinking, this is unbelievable. These queens know so many people died and they went, but still they do not understand that everybody is going to die, and they think that the body is the soul. So let me come. And if you remember in Mahabharata, Yamaraj asks Yudhishthira, what is the most glorious thing that you have in this world? And then he says, everybody goes to this Mrityu-loka, the temple of death, but everybody thinks, I'm not going to die, it will be someone else. So he comes, and he decided that, and the queen said that our king has died and nobody is there. Then he says, I am 5-year-old boy, my parents are not there to protect me, I am so weak, and nothing has happened. So the Supreme Lord is actually the creator, maintainer and annihilator of everything in this material life. So there is no use of you crying like this. So we are not the body, you are the soul.